Hello again and welcome to the 140k Imperial Guard Tactics video. Now before we get into today's video, I would like to say a huge thank you to Shane Layton McNear for sending in some awesome pictures of his Militarum Tempestus Scions. Have to say, I really like the colour scheme you've gone with these guys, Shane. The blue and white and black, especially on those Valkyries, looks absolutely fantastic. And it goes in contrast with the yellow nose cones as well, which I think really bring the whole model together. Really enjoyed the fact that you've been sending in these pictures bit by bit over the few weeks and months. I've compiled them all together and it's just been really fun to see you build this army up. So thank you for sending the series of pictures in, Shane. They look really good. So if anyone else has got any cool pictures they want me to use in my videos, please post on my Facebook page. There will be a link down in the description below. Now today, guys, I'm going to be covering the units that are available to the Scions. Now this will be a general tactics video and it will be the last of these foundation videos that I'm doing for the faction. I know a lot of you are really keen to see me get into the specific regiments of the Scions that were released for Psychic Awakening. I can tell you guys that that will be coming in the next few videos, okay? This is the last of the foundation ones. After that, we're doing the faction specific ones. Now originally I was going to go straight into those new regiments. The reason I've held off on that is enough has changed with the Scions that it actually merits me revisiting the units. I had actually previously covered these a couple of years ago, but 8th edition and probably soon to be 9th edition is a very ever-evolving game. And so enough has changed that I need to come back and cover these units. I know you guys are really impatient to see me do those new Psychic Awakening stuff. I promise you, next video, we're going to be looking at one of those new regiments. So, without further ado, let's take a look at some of these units. Now, I mentioned in the last video that Scions are, whilst a difficult force to master, they are a relatively easy force to pick up. And that's simply by the fact that you have quite a limited unit roster. Now, if you're going to play your basic Scions, you only have about 4 or 5 units, which means you only have about 4 or 5 things you have to get your head round initially. The first one, and the one that I want to look at now, is your bread and butter unit. The unit that your entire force will be built around, and that is your Stormtroopers, your basic Scion squads. Now, your basic Scion squad encompasses everything about the faction. They are small, they are elite, they're fragile, they're incredibly hard hitting. The important thing to do with these guys is to tailor them for a specific battlefield role. Okay. Now there is some take all comers options available to you, but they can perform specific roles incredibly well. Now let's take a look at your basic Scion. He's got a movement of 6, he's got a weapon skill of 4+. He's not a close combat guy, okay? He only hits as well in close combat as a regular guardsman. But he has a ballistic skill of 3+. That's as good as a space marine. Straight away that should be telling you these guys are there to put out the dagger. The strength 3, toughness 3. So again, strength 3, not really great for close combat. Toughness 3, not particularly durable. 1 wound, 1 attack, leadership 6, 7 on the sergeant, and a 4+ save. Now, speaking of the Tempestus sergeant, here's a thing that most people overlook. The Tempestus sergeant actually has a 3+ weapon skill. I didn't realise this for years. It's only a recent discovery. The Tempestus sergeant has a 3+ weapon skill. Maybe I did know it and I've forgotten it, but looking at it again, I was really surprised when I was preparing for this video. 3+ weapon skill. Now that's actually really important because it does mean that putting a power weapon on your sergeant is not a total waste of time at all, and he can actually do some decent damage with it. He's got the same ballistic skill, 3+, strength 3, toughness 3, wounds 1, attacks 2, leadership 7, 4+ save. So you can take them in 5-man squads, which has 1 sergeant and 4 basic Scions, and you can boost them up to a 10-man squad, well, anywhere between. Each Scion comes with a hotshot lasgun, frag, and crack grenades. Now, regular guards only come with frag grenades. Scions get frag and crack. And your basic Tempestus sergeant comes with a hotshot las pistol. Rubbish, forget about it. Chainsword, frag grenades, and crack grenades. Now, these guys have access to special weapons, and they can take 2 special weapons per squad, but they can't take any heavy weapons. That means no 2-man weapon teams, like your autocannon, your las cannons, your missile launchers. You can't take any of that, okay? So you put all that together and you have a small unit, flexible, with good firepower, that is on the move. You know, you're not planning to sit there and shoot with them. Okay. Now, let's take a look at that sergeant first. Okay. Your basic Tempestus sergeant, you want him to be doing something. Now, in contrast to what I used to say with the Scion sergeant, which is it's not really worth putting the plasma pistol on him. Just always put the bolt pistol on him. The reason I used to say that was because the plasma pistols were too expensive and the las pistols were useless. And the reason the las pistols are useless is a hotshot las pistol only has a 6-inch range, which means you can't deep strike into range with that thing. Okay, 6 inches is just too close for Scions most of the time. It's just too. You don't want to be that close to the enemy if you can help it. You want to be like 9 inches or 12 inches away, but not 6 inches. It's not a good weapon. The bolt pistol costs 1 point. The problem with the bolt pistol is it rarely fails to achieve something. You get what you pay for. Now, if they could take a bolter, like a regular sergeant, like a guard sergeant, I'd say take that, but you can't. You can only take the bolt pistol. I've used my Scions in many games, and in all of those games, I've taken bolt pistols, and I can tell you, I can't remember a single time when that bolt pistol has achieved anything. Okay, so naturally, what that leaves is the plasma pistol. Now, plasma pistols are only 5 points. That is dirt cheap, guys. Okay, that's honestly super cheap, and it's a strength 7, AP minus 3, damage 1 weapon, but you're going to overcharge that thing to the strength 8, AP minus 3, damage 2. You're going to do that, okay? Because that's my way I run my Scion Sergeant is with a chainsword and a plasma pistol, and that would be it. Okay, because whilst he has got a 3+ weapon skill, you don't really want to be relying upon him in close combat. It's not like regular guard where you can just throw 3 or 4 squads in and just bury the enemy in attack. You can't do that with Scions. They're 5-man squads. You don't want to be doing that. His chainsword hitting on a 3+ is a nice bonus, but it's not something you want to be focusing on. However, don't beat yourself up if you feel like giving your Scion Sergeants power swords. They can still make use of them, it's just not super points efficient. Save that stuff for your officers. Now, plasma pistol, like I said, that's how you want to run your Scion Sergeants, because with that plasma pistol, he's able to put out a good, solid, heavy-hitting shot with that plasma pistol. Now, in previous editions, you would never want to overcharge the plasma pistol on that sergeant, because if he dies, you lose the leadership bonus, which in this case you get leadership 7 to leadership 6. Not so much a problem anymore because of the way that the new commissars work, especially Lord Commissars, which you will be taking. You're rarely going to be relying upon that Scion's leadership, Scion Sergeant leadership 7. They're either all going to die because it's a 5-man squad and it's easy to wipe out, or you're going to be in range of a Lord Commissar if you build your army appropriately, and therefore you're not going to need the sergeant's leadership. So, new lesson, guys, which I didn't used to say, overcharge that plasma pistol. You should be overcharging it. You shouldn't be treating it any different to any other plasma weapon that you'd be using, which is, in the guard, overcharging them every turn. Now, speaking of plasma, and moving on to the rest of the squad, the 2 other special weapons that you're going to be looking at for your Scions, generally speaking, is going to be plasma guns. Okay? You can make an argument for the other heavy weapon systems, especially with some of the specific regiments like Land and Lions can really take good effect from those grenade launchers. But generally speaking, if your take-all-comers Scion unit has got 2 plasma guns in it, you just can't go wrong. Scions themselves are so dirt cheap that you don't really feel the cost of taking a couple of plasma guns in each squad. And what you've got to remember is that these guys have got to achieve their mission. If they don't achieve it because you skimped out and bought them, like flamers or grenade launchers or volley guns instead of plasma, you're going to regret it. Now, like I said, you can make a case for those other weapon systems. the Capic Eagles, they love their hotshot volley guns, don't get me wrong, but we're talking a general tournament competitive take-all-comers Scion squad is running plasma for days. As much plasma as you can. Okay, it's just, sorry guys, that's just the way it is. I will briefly cover the other weapons. Melter guns are okay, but they suffer from the fact that they only get one shot each. Plasma guns get double that from when you deep strike in. And flamers, you can't deep strike into range with your flamers. So, not good to be mass spamming flamers. It's not a bad idea, though, to take a single flamer squad in your army. Because often what you can do is you can put them in a Valkyrie and you can take advantage of one of the new stratagems that lets you jump out within 5 inches of the enemy, which means you can flamer them. That's not a bad thing to do. You can do the same thing with melter guns, but melter guns are super expensive. And they don't have as good damage output as plasma guns. I mean, the maximum damage that a melter gun can do is 6, and the maximum damage that a plasma gun can do is 4 when you overcharge it. Fair enough. But rarely will your melter gun do that. In fact, most of the time it won't do anything because it's got a hit, and then it's got a wound, and then it's got to get past the enemy's invulnerable save, which they'll probably have. Plasma guns have got 2 shots, means they've got 2 tries to get through. Hotshot volley guns are interesting, but outside of running them on Capic Eagles, which don't suffer the penalty for moving and shooting with them because they're a heavy weapon, I wouldn't really consider them on your infantry. Hotshot volley guns belong on your Torx Primes. We'll get to those later. So that is how I would run your Scions. Double plasma and a plasma pistol. That's your take-all-comers unit. Some volley guns is a good idea. Now, I want to say one more thing before we move on. That's not to say you don't consider the other heavy weapons and you don't take any of them. No. Having a flamer squad in there that you can use to take advantage of a stratagem is a good idea. Having a melter gun squad or 2 for those times when you're facing just sort of regular armor that you can just bust your way through with that AP -4 and do lots of damage, it's a good idea. Having a hotshot volley gun squad or 2 to be able to sit back on objectives and provide fire support is a good idea. Those are all fine, but you should be taking 1 or 2 of those units, maybe sort of 1 flamer, 1 melter, 1 volley gun to have as tools in the toolbox, and then sort of the rest you're going to be looking at plasma. Okay, plasma's so good in this edition. Now, I haven't talked about grenade launchers. Grenade launchers I wouldn't take unless you're running Land on Lions. It's as simple as that, and we'll get into that in the Land on Lion video. Like I said, you want to be looking at plasma guns, and then a sprinkling of melter and volley guns and flamers. Just one of each one of those squads. Okay? Now, the next unit you have available to yourselves is the Militarum Tempestus Command Squad. Now, in days gone by, you really wanted to spam these guys, your Militarum Tempestus Command Squads, and they are still very good. But the problem is that your basic Scion is 7 points. Your basic Tempestus Command Squad Scion hasn't had his points reduced, which means he's still 9 points. That's 2 points more for no benefit. He doesn't get an extra attack or wound or anything. Nope, just 2 points more. Now, the reason why you might say to yourself, well, why would I do that? Because, well, I'll tell you why. Because Militarum Tempestus Command Squads, whilst are slightly more expensive, can get 4 special weapons in the 4-man squad. Now, you can't take them as any bigger than 4-man squads. They're just 4-man, 4 Scions, 1 hot shot each, frag, crack grenades, good times. But you can take a special weapon on each dude. So what they're really good at doing is just dropping in just a ball of death. That's what they are. They just drop in and they just they mess stuff up. Now, they are good, but I do not believe they are the auto-include they once were. And in fact, I would favour taking regular Scions over command squads, which I know sounds crazy. Okay, I know it does, but hear me out. Your Scion command squad is actually, you're paying a point more for your Scion command squad than you are your regular Scion squad, and you don't get a sergeant. Okay, so bear that in mind for a second. You're paying a point more, and you've got one less dude. Okay, now bear in mind that the sergeant has a plasma pistol, and that's essentially a special weapon, and you're able to take 2 other special weapons. Your basic Scion squad can get 3 special weapons to your Tempestus command squad, which gets 4. So yeah, you do get 1 more special weapon in the command squad, but you miss out on an extra body. You miss out on an extra body. You miss out on objective secured, which is a big deal. It is a big deal. So Scion command squads, they're good, but like I said, they're not the auto-include anymore. They're not. And if you can get away with just taking more regular Scion squads, I probably would do. Now, again, I would still take 1 or 2 Scion command squads and give them 4 plasma guns each. Okay? And I would do that because it's just a way, to be honest, you could just take, I would still consider taking 3. To be fair, if you're committing to pure Scions, you still probably want to take your 3 Scion command squads and give them 4 plasma guns. But you've got to understand that these things have got to achieve their objective, because if they don't, every guy that you lose is a special weapon as well. And they're 18 points per guy when you're running them with plasma guns. So it hurts. Like I said, I can't make my mind up in this video. That's how much on the fence they are. I'd still say, I still say try them out, consider them, but especially with things like Auspex scan and Marines being so prevalent, they often will deep strike in, get Auspex scanned, and then just that's it. You lose the whole squad. Whereas if you do that on a 5-man Scion squad, you've still, it's not as expensive. It's cheaper. Regular Scion squads can do pretty much the same job with an extra body and OBSEC for cheaper. That's the tricky thing about them. But command squads do bring 4 plasma guns in a neat package, which can just drop in and just murder something. So it's not as clear cut, guys. People who have watched my previous videos, I would say you don't want to bother with your basic Scions. Just take what you need to minimum fill out your detachment, and then take 3 Scion command squads. It's not true anymore. Regular Scions have caught up. Now, some of you may have noticed that I didn't even talk about things like medipacks or flags or anything like that for your Scion command squads. Don't even consider them. They're not a support squad. They are a murder squad. Tailor them to do that. If you take them with a flag and a medipack and a vox, whilst it's very cool, don't get me wrong, rule of cool always prevails. From a competitive standpoint, efficiency standpoint, it's not the best choice. So we've covered the 2 infantry units you've got available. Now let's take a look at the characters. Okay. Now normally I'd cover character first and then infantry, but in this way you really want to be focusing on your infantry first with the Scions, because your Scion infantry will, basically they're the bread and butter. Now for your HQs, you have 2 options essentially. No, you've got 3. You've got 3. You've got the Lord Commissar, the Tempestus Prime, and you've got the Primaris Psyker. Now, I will be honest with you. I would probably not take the Primaris Psykers, only because I think you're better off taking the Astropaths now that they've gone down to 15 points. Again, previously I would have probably said take 3 Tempestus Primes and then fill out your detachment with Primaire Psychers. I would not do that anymore. The way the field has changed, you want to be taking 3 temp. If you're taking triple battalion, which is what you want to be aiming for with your Scion army, you want to be taking triple battalion. You want to be taking a Tempestus Prime and a Lord Commissar per detachment. Okay. Now your Tempestus Prime is there to do one thing and one thing only. He is not a combat character. Okay. He is an order character, and you want to squeeze him for every little bitty order that he can get. Now, with your Scions, you can take every Tempestus Prime comes with. Well, I'll tell you what. You want to squeeze him for every single order. We'll cover the stats, and then we'll go into the options and how you can squeeze those orders. So, your Tempestus Prime costs 35 points base. In reality, it costs 40 because you're always going to take the command rod, and we'll get there in a second. Your Tempestus Prime has got weapon skill 3 plus ballistic skill 3 plus strength 3, toughness 3, 4 wounds, 3 attacks, leadership 8, 4 plus save. Comes the hotshot las pistol, frag, and crack grenades. Notice he does not come with an invulnerable save. Okay, all of the guard characters pretty much do. The Tempestus Prime does not. He comes with a 4 plus basic save, but no refractive field, which it sucks, to be honest, because he's the only character that doesn't get it, and it would be really awesome if he had one. So he doesn't have a 5-up invuln. I can't tell you the number of times my 5-up invuln has saved me as a guard player. Now, that hotshot las pistol, you're going to forget about it. Your bolt pistol and your plasma pistols that you would normally be considering on, like your sergeants, you're going to forget about them as well. You don't want any shooting on this guy, because what you can do, instead of taking a pistol, you can swap your hotshot las pistol for a Tempestus Command Rod. Now, the Tempestus Command Rod is really good. Guess what? Gives you an extra order. That's it. Extra order per guy, and it costs 5 points. Take it. Take it every single time. Do not question it. Do not pass go. Do not collect £200. Just take the Tempestus Command Rod. Okay? But plasma pistol. No. No. You only get 3 officers. You need them to put out 2 orders each minimum. Okay, if you don't do that, then you just can't function as Scions. You need as many orders as you can get your hands on. Now, speaking of extra orders, 3 easy ways to remember to get 3 extra orders. Okay, not including your command rod. You've got 3 Tempestus Primes. Each one's got a command rod that's 6 orders. You can spend 1 command point a turn for Inspired Tactics, which lets you do an extra order for 1 guy. So that puts you up to 7. You can take the Warlord trait, and you should be Master of Command, which lets you one of your Scions do an extra order. And you can take the Auto Reliquary of Tiberius, which is a relic, which on a 2+ allows you to issue an extra order. I would recommend making one guy, your Warlord with the extra order, 1 guy with the relic, he gets extra order, and use the last guy to consistently do Inspired Tactics on each turn, which means you've got 3 officers which can do 3 orders a turn consistently. That is good. It's very good. Now, you then want to be taking Lord Commissars as your other choice. 2 reasons. 1, Lord Commissars are cheap. 35 points. And they fit in with the fluff, and they don't affect your regiment trait. That's actually, I'm putting all that under 1 reason. The second reason is leadership. They give out leadership 9 to everyone within 6 inches of them. Now, your basic Scion might have gone through a lot of training, but apparently he's still only the same leadership of a guardsman, which means you want Lord Commissars around. The great thing about Lord Commissars is because they give leadership 9 to everyone around them. If you're just taking 5-man squads, you basically don't need to worry about leadership, because if you lose 4 guys out of your 5-man Scion squad, you need to roll a 6 to lose that last guy if he's in range of a Lord Commissar. And then you just execute him anyway, just for the lols. But you need to get a 6. And there are other ways you can mitigate that by using the stratagem that lets you take your leadership on a D3. And I never remember the name of that order. I'm going to find it now, and I'm not going to forget it again. Fight to the death. Fight to death for 1 command point, and you're fearless. Now, you also have, in the new Psychic Awakening book, for 1 command point, a stratagem which lets everyone around your Lord Commissar just pass. Just pass, which means you can take bigger 10-man squads if you want to. Now, generally speaking, you don't really want to be taking big 10-man squads at Scions, but, and again we'll get into specific regiments for it, there are a couple of the new regiments which really want to be taking big 10-man squads at Scions. They can really take advantage of it. So that's why you want to take your Lord Commissar. The third kind, I know there's only two, but there's obviously more than two. The third reason is your Lord Commissar does provide actually a decent source of combat capability. Lord Commissars hit on a 2+ in weapon skill and ballistic skill. You know, putting 3 power swords on 3 Lord Commissars and sending them in against something, they're going to chop it up. They're going to chop it up good. They might not kill it, but they're at least going to chop its ankle off. Lord Commissars are genuinely quite good. Now, you could take Primaris Psychers, okay, but there is enough. Primaris Psychers are a good source of psychic powers, obviously, and you do want to have some psychic powers, but they've been, and like I said, I used to suggest Primaris Psychers over Lord Commissars. Due to the fact that Lord Commissars now get access to a couple of unique stratagems, they've gone down in points significantly since the beginning of 8th edition. And they provide a lot of additional support buffs and combat capabilities. They're better now. They're a lot more viable now. And considering that the Astropath has come down to 15 points, kind of makes the Primaris Psyker the less rosy choice. Because the Primaris Psyker costs almost 50 points. I think it's 46 points. An Astropath and a Lord Commissar combined only costs 50. So for roughly the same points as a Primaris Psyker, you're getting a Lord Commissar and an Astropath. It's kind of a no-brainer. You know, the Primaris Psyker, you might want, you know, it doesn't really do anything better than an Astropath. In fact, the Astropath typically does better than the Primaris Psyker because it's got a few extra abilities. So, bear that in mind. So that's why I'm not going to cover Primaris Psykers. I wouldn't consider them a choice now. You've got them, but I wouldn't consider them a viable choice. You want to be looking at your Commissar Astropath combo. So let's get to the Astropaths. I tell you what, I will put a little caveat in. I would consider taking, maybe, if you don't want to have 3 Lord Commissars, a good viable thing that I would consider is taking 3 Tempestus Primes, of course, 2 Lord Commissars, and a Primaris Psyker. The only reason I'm considering that Primaris Psyker is because it is a reliable source of smite. Okay, it's always good to have a few mortal wounds you can chuck around, but even then, you know, Scions aren't really there to do damage in the psychic phase. You're really taking Psykers in your Scion army as psychic defense, not psychic offense. Okay? So let's look at the Astropath. It's 15 points. It's got a shitty stat line. He can't hit worth anything in combat or shooting. He's strength 3 to 3. He's only got 3 wounds. He's only got 6+ save. You swap out that telepathic stave every single time for Lad's Pistol. It makes him 15 points. Makes him cheaper. He can cast 1 psychic power, like a Primaris. But when he tries to do a smite, he does it on a d6. So you're not really taking him for that. The reason you're taking Astropaths is crazily, it's not really for the psychic abilities. Yes, it's nice to be able to put a Night Shroud on a unit or a Psychic Barrier on a unit, but your Scions typically won't get huge amount of traction out of your psychic powers because, well, they're only little 5-man squads. I mean, yeah, you can put a -1 to hit on a 5-man squad, or, you know, you can put a +1 armor save on a 5-man squad, but it's not great. It does allow you to, you know, if you want to take a big 10-man sort of squad with some of these specific regiments that we'll be talking about in the later videos, and put Psychic Barrier and Night Shroud and have a bit of a death squad, that's cool, that's doable. But you're not really taking your Astropaths for the psychic abilities. You're taking them for their inbuilt ability, which is Astral Divination. Okay. At the start of your shooting phase, you pick an enemy unit within 18 inches of this model. For the duration of the phase, the unit you picked gains no bonus to their saving throws for being in cover when it is targeted by attacks made by friendly Astral Militarum units within 6 inches of this model. Basically, you're taking Astropaths to strip cover. And that's really good with Scions. Okay, now, the reason it's very good is whilst you have a lot of AP to mash through cover a lot of the time, it's still frustrating when you're shooting at like Marines in cover because they've got, a 5+ save, which is just rude. It's not, because they've got to go from 2 with minus 3 with plasma. It's just, you just strip that away. 15 points. You don't necessarily have to take 3 Astropaths. You don't have to. A couple would be fine. It just gives you that little bit of tactical flexibility where you can just be like, I'm just going to remove that cover from that unit that I really, really need to die. It's going to change the game. It's going to change the tournament game. And it just removes a factor and it removes a little bit of stress. Astropaths are good in any guard force. You should be taking them. And in Scions, it's no exception. Now, one last honourable mention. It's not essential, but if you're running a lot of Taurox Primes, consider a Tech Priest Engine Seer. They don't affect your regiment trait, and they can heal D3 wounds a turn. However, you know what? On balance, I probably would say it's not worth it, but if you're running a lot of Taurox Primes, like everyone's in a Prime all the time, then, if you're running Capic Eagles, for example, then Tech Priest Engines is probably the way to go. Now, well, at least one. The last unit that I want to talk about, who is vital, so you know what, don't worry about Tech Priest Engines so much. Keep them at the back of your mind. They're a tool to have in the toolbox, not necessarily, if you can build around them with Capic Eagles, but don't worry about them too much. One unit that you want to be taking, one character, sorry, this is the last character you want to be considering, is the Officer of the Fleet. Okay, there are some great stratagems now. Well, there's a great stratagem now for the Officer of the Fleet that makes his air raid ability go off like all the time. He's really powerful. We're going to go through it in detail. I think he deserves a bit of detail. So, the Officer of the Fleet is a fairly basic character. Movement 6. They've all got movement 6. Weapon skill 4+, so he's not fighting. Ballistic skill 3+. When he comes to the las pistol, so he's not a combat character. Strength 3, toughness 3. Wounds 3, attacks 2, leadership 6, 5 per save. Now he only comes with the last pistol. He doesn't even come with a chainsaw, so you can't even get an extra attack out of him. This guy is not there for combat. Okay, this guy is there for 2 reasons. One, but he's got 2 abilities. That's why he's there. Okay, 1, air raid request. Once per battle in your shooting phase, you can pick an enemy unit other than a character that is visible to this model anywhere on the battlefield, and roll a d6. On a 1 to 3, nothing happens. On a 4 to 5, the target unit suffers d3 mortal wounds. And on a 6, the target unit suffers 3 mortal wounds. Now that's a pretty good ability. But I'm hearing you say, yeah, but it's like it happens on a 4+. That's kind of unreliable. It is. But this guy's only, he's only 20 points. So he's, he's pretty cheap. But it's not that bad anymore because they actually released a new stratagem in Psychic Awakening for the Scions, and I'm gonna get it now. I normally I just tell you what the stratagem does, but I'm gonna get the name because I think it's important to be precise. So Militarum Tempestus, expand. Let's take a look at their stratagems. So it is called Tactical Air Control, and it costs 1 command point, and you add 2 to the roll for the Officer of the Fleet's air raid ability. Okay, and you can use range and line of sight measured from any Scion unit with a Voxcaster. Now, you're not really going to be taking Voxcaster on your Scions. It's not really needed. It's definitely not needed. But it's a cool little bonus. But what you're really taking it for is that +2, because that means when you roll for your air raid on a 1, nothing happens, but on a 2, on a 2 and a 3, the enemy takes D3 mortal wounds, and on a 4+, because it's a 6, a 5, and a 4, on a 4+, the enemy takes 3 mortal wounds. So now it's pretty much always going to do some damage. It's going to do D3, we've got a 50-50 chance of it doing a flat 3 mortal wounds. That's better. If you want a reliable source of smite, that's a better way of doing it, because you're going to take an officer fleet for his second ability as well. That's the way of doing it. You know, a couple of those guys is not a bad idea. Although I tell you what, I'd stick to taking 1. Just don't over egg it. Just take the 1. Again, if you've noticed what I'm saying with Scions, you know, you want to have 1 officer of the fleet. You know, 1 or 2 astropaths. You know, you want to have a lot of, you know, maybe one tech presented. The thing with Scions is you want to have lots of little tools in your toolbox that you can pull out. That's what they're really good at doing. With like regular guard, you want to specialize. You want to be like, I'm going all infantry and I'm going to overwhelm the enemy with numbers. You know, I'm just going to brute force it. With Scions, it's really important that you've got all these little tools in your toolbox. Now, your second ability that your officer of the fleet has is Strafing Coordinates. Now, at the start of the shooting phase, pick an enemy unit other than one which can fly within 18 inches of this model. For the duration of the phase, you can reroll hit rolls of 1 for any friendly Aeronautica Imperialis units that can fly that target that you picked. Now, what you're looking at there is Valkyries, guys. Now, bear in mind, we'll get to Valkyries in a moment, but what this does is it gives you reroll 1s to hit on your Valkyries, and that's really important because Valkyries have only got a ballistic skill of 4+ most of the time, and so getting those reroll 1s to hit means they hit more often. But if you put your Valkyrie into hover mode, it actually goes up to a 3+ to hit. It gets +1 to hit. So when you think about it, you've got a Valkyrie with +1 to hit and rerolling 1s. That's a lot of buffs, and that's just coming from a 20-point guy. You know, 20 points to get reroll 1s. Spending 20 points to be able to get reroll 1s to hit is just worth it on its own. The fact this guy can also start chucking out mortal wounds once a game is nice as well. So that's all your characters and your infantry. Those are all really good, but they're all worthless if they die before they do anything. And what you've really got to remember with your Scions is you need to keep them protected. Okay, if they die before they're able to achieve their mission, if that squad dies before it can do what you want it to do, then that's just bad. You know, your plan's going to fall apart very quickly. Now, the 2 transports that you're going to be really looking at are Valkyries and Torx Primes. Okay. Now, Valkyries, we've already talked upon. We've already mentioned them, so we'll go with them first. They're not technically a Aeronautica Imperialis unit, but they can be taken with Scions without affecting their regiment trait, and they're so closely associated with them that, to be honest, they probably should be at this point be considered like a Militarum Tempestus unit. They're technically Aeronautica Imperialis, but they're so synonymous with Scions that they're considered a Scion unit. And I would paint my Scions with the same colours as my Valkyries. Now, your basic Valkyrie comes with a multi-laser and a Hellstrike missile. Nothing about that sounds good. Okay, you want to be swapping those weapons out straight away. To be honest, there's only one configuration of Valkyrie that you want to really be considering, and that is the Dagger Valkyrie. You can outfit them for anti-tank, but it's not great, and I'll tell you why. See, if you take your Valkyrie outfitted for anti-tank, you can swap your multi-laser for a las cannon, and you keep the Hellstrike missiles. And so the las cannon's a las cannon, does what it does, strength 9, AP -1, but it's, you know, d6 damage. The Hellstrike missile is also only heavy 1, strength 8, AP -2, d6 damage. And when you're shooting with it, you basically get the melter rule. You roll 2 dice, inflicting damage with a weapon, discard the lowest. Now the problem with that is it's only 2 shots from one unit. That's not very good. And considering these units are going to be setting you back 100 points plus, really need more than 2 shots from that. And to be fair, you know what your Valkyries do? Your Valkyries are there to pump out some anti-infantry, some anti-heavy infantry firepower. That's what they're good at doing. They're good at just shredding infantry and and medium infantry, not heavy infantry. So, how you want to equip your Valkyrie is, it's a bit of a bone of contention, but you probably actually want to keep that multi-laser. Now, I know a lot of people which say, swap out that multi-laser for a las cannon. It's only 10 points. It's like a super cheap las cannon. Just do it. The problem is that the las cannon, I can't tell you the number of times that I've been facing Valkyries with las cannons, and when I have been using my Valkyries with las cannons, and it doesn't do anything. It just misses. And what you've got to remember is, people say, oh yeah, but you can get the +1 to hit, and you can get the reroll 1s to hit with the Officer of the Fleet. What you've got to remember is that Officer of the Fleet's ability only targets one enemy unit. It's not a generic, like, everyone gets reroll 1s to hit. You have to pick the enemy unit, and then your Valkyries get +1 to hit against it. That goes at odds with the other weapons that this thing is going to be using, like the multiple rocket pods and the heavy bolters, which we'll get into in a moment. So really, I would actually stick with the multi-laser, because you're taking it as the cheap option. It's 3 points, and it's 5 points, and it puts out 3 semi-decent shots. Now, I'm not saying taking las cannons is bad, but I personally would take my Valkyries in the following configuration, which is a multi-laser, 2 heavy bolters, and multiple rocket pods. Now, what you get with that is your heavy bolters are your standard. You get 2 of them, so it's heavy 3 times 2, so that's heavy. So that's 6 shots, strength 5, and crucially AP -1. Just really good at punching through armor. Your multiple rocket pods are basically the same thing again, but they're assault D6. Now, a lot of people think of them as heavy D6. They're not. They're assault D6. And that's important because it means you can move and shoot them with no penalty. Whereas the heavy bolters, you move and shoot with them, you've got a -1 to hit. But your multiple rocket pod is strength 5, AP -1, 1 damage. On average, what you're going to get from one Valkyrie then is 6 heavy bolter shots and 7 multiple rocket pod shots. So 13 strength 5, AP -1 shots. Sprinkle that on top with a multi-laser, it's an additional 3 strength, 6 AP -0 shots, and you've got a unit out there which is pumping out 16 shots a turn, which are all designed to kill the same target, unlike that las cannon. They're all designed for shredding infantry. So that means you can put your Officer of the Fleet's ability on one enemy unit, and you can just fire and fire and fire away and get those reroll 1s. You can go into hover mode, and you could be just putting out those multiple rocket pods. Fantastic. And all of that configuration put together only sets you back 137 points, which is actually quite cheap, because the Valkyrie can also transport 12 guys. Now that is crucial to remember. So yeah, sure, the Valkyrie can put some damage out there, but that's only half the reason you're taking it. The main reason you're taking it is its transport capability. Okay, this thing can travel 20 to 45 inches a turn on its full bracket. Even on its minimum bracket, it's going 20 inches. That's faster than anything else you've got in your army. Okay? Now, they are tough as well. They are toughness 7, which is the toughest thing you've got in your force. And they've got 14 wounds. That is not to underestimate. That is tough. That is 1 extra toughness over your Scion, over your Torx Prime, and 4 extra wounds over your Torx Prime. Okay? So, they've got firepower, and they're pretty durable. Don't forget they've got a -1 to hit when they're zooming around as well. So they've got Dagger, and they've got durability, and they can transport 12 guys. Now, what is so important about transporting 12 guys? Okay, that is 2 5-man squads and a couple of characters. Torx Primes can only carry 10, which is not 2 squads and a character. That's a squad and a character, pretty much. Okay. Now, what you really want to be thinking about with your Valkyries is you want them to perform 2 battlefield roles. One is Overwatch gunship. They're going to be sat there, putting out the Dagger, having a good time. Second ability that they have is bringing in your reserves. Now, you can deep strike, true, but deep strike doesn't come in until turn 2. And you might want to be getting some plasma. You might, as I said in one of my previous videos, Scions can struggle with the Alpha Strike. What your Valkyries can do is can use an ability called Grav Shoot Insertion. Your Valkyrie can fly a long way, and any point over which it has flown, your men can disembark. Now, when they do that, they have to roll a dice, and on a 1, then they break their legs, so it's not good. However, I believe it's if you travel over 20 inches. So if you just travel your minimum 20 inches, you're fine. But don't hold me to that, because there's probably an FAQ out there which has screwed that over. But basically what it means, guys, long story short, what does that mean? Valkyries have the unique ability for you to move and then disembark. No other transport can do that. That is very, very good. So what you can do with your Valkyries, if you're like, crap, I need to get first blood. I can see this game is going to come down to who's got the most secondaries. I need my first blood. And what you do is you zoom a Valkyrie up to them, drop, go straight over the heads of the enemies, drop out a couple of Scion squads, and then just unleash some plasma hell with the character, just giving them the orders. Maybe an Astropath removing the cover. You just delete an enemy unit and you've got first blood in the bag. That's what Valkyries are really good at doing. They're really good at allowing you to get first blood in an army which typically struggles with it. Okay? The second thing that Valkyries do, and it's about reserves as well, second thing to do with reserves that they do, is they can keep Scions safe until they want to deploy at an opportune moment anywhere they want. So, again, if you're lucky and if you play your cards right and you've got your Valkyries, you've got your Valkyries to last till turns 4, 5, turns 4 and 5, and maybe 6 and 7, you can actually essentially deep strike, in air quotes, your Scions again, because they can stay in the Valkyrie for when they're needed, and then you can fly that Valkyrie over the enemy and then grav shoot out the back. That has an advantage over deep striking, which you have to do turn 2 and turn 3. So, to summarise, because I know it's been a bit all over the place, this Valkyrie unit analysis, but to summarise, your Valkyries give you a lot of tactical flexibility, and they are, because what you can do is you can either fly in there and deliver an alpha strike, or you can keep your units safe and do multiple deep strikes after turn 3, because your opponent might, what your opponent's got, what that does to your opponent is, often if you're a heavy deep strike army like Scions can be, then your opponent's like, I just have to screen for turns 2 and turn 3, and if I can do that, then I am safe, and I only bring enough screens to survive those 2 turns. Well, if your Scions come in and turn 2, turn 3, and your opponent's like, you remove your opponent's screening for those 2 turns, then your Valkyries can start flying in and deliver those pseudo deep strikes via grav shoot. It's a really nice tactical bit of flexibility, and I can't tell you the number of times when a squad of Scions has just been, on my force, or when I face them. It's really nice just to have a squad or 2 of 5 Scions, just in a couple of Valkyries flying around, and then turn 5, just going to drop them where I need them and deliver that cheeky little stab in the back just when your opponent wasn't expecting it. Your opponent thought he was safe. Thought those Valkyries haven't been doing that much damage to me. They've been flying around. They only hit on 4s and 5s and they've been flying around. No biggie. Doesn't bother targeting them. And then turn 5 comes along. Your opponent's still on the ground. He's only got a basic bitch unit holding that backfield objective. 2 Valkyries fly over the top, 45 inches. Drop out a couple of Scion squads. Plasma. That objective is no longer under your opponent's control. And you have essentially deep striked to do it. Very effective. A lot of people see grav shoot as this one-dimensional thing, fly into the enemy's face, deep strike out of the back, and then die. No, it actually has great late-game potential. So, the last unit we're going to talk about, and it's probably the one that the Scions are most famous for, is the Torx Prime. Now, I did touch upon it in a little bit of comparison with the Valkyrie just before. We're going to go into it now. The Torx Prime is a good transport, but it's not. That's not actually, weirdly, that's not its primary thing, right? Its primary thing is to be a little gunboat, essentially. Because your Scions can deep strike in, and they can go in Valkyries. And that's kind of the best way to transport them around. Your Torx Primes, yeah, great, you can put a squad in each one, but their transport capacity kind of limits them because they can't take a couple of squads and a character. So, whilst you want to be filling your Valkyries to the brim, your Torx Primes, you're probably going to have like a squad in each one and maybe a character. So I wouldn't be thinking that just because it's got a 10-man capacity, you need to be filling that 10-man capacity every single time. Not at all. A really tasty Torx Prime unit is just a Torx Prime, kitted out with some Dagger with a Plasma Squad in the back. That's a take-all-come as Torx Prime unit. You can take that into your list and not worry what you go against. It's always going to be able to perform well. Now, let's get into the Torx Prime itself and less about the tactics. We'll get back to that in a minute. So it's a pretty fragile transport. It's only got toughness 6. It's only got 10 wounds. It's got 3+ save, so that's good. It does, however, have a 14-inch movement, which is pretty nice. And even when you get it down to half wounds, it's still got a 10-inch movement, which is really nice. That's actually really potent. So the thing's nippy. Now, there are 2 ways, traditionally, to outfit your Torx Prime. And that's the Punchy Prime and the Dagger Prime. And the Punchy Prime was where you take the Torx missile launcher and some autocannons, and you use it to sit back and blast your opponent from long range. And the Dagger Prime is where you take the Torx Gatling cannon and hotshot volley guns and maybe a cheeky storm bolter, and that unit can put out like 30 shots a turn, but they're all strength 4 Dagger shots, and that would shred the enemy infantry for you. And previously, I always advocated the Dagger Primes, always, without fail. I don't think the line is quite as clear cut yet, and also another challenger has appeared, which is, I haven't really got a good name for it, but the generic Prime. General Prime. You know, it's okay, General Prime, but I'll go into it in a moment. So we'll go through the different weapon options available. So the Punchy Prime is got the Torx missile launcher. Now this is basically a 2-shot missile launcher. It's nothing special. It does the frag mode, 2d6, 48-inch range, strength 4, AP nothing, damage 1. Crack missile, you know, strength heavy 2. You can fire 2 of them, heavy 2, strength 8, AP -2, d6 damage. You pair that with a couple of autocannons, which are putting out 2 shots each, strength 7, AP -1, damage 2, and that's pretty good. The problem with that configuration that I don't like is it doesn't take it's a sit back and shoot configuration, and the problem with the sit back and shoot configuration is your Scions often want to be getting in there and smashing face, yeah, but as I've said, Scions can really struggle with 2 things. One, Alpha Strike, getting first blood. Having a couple of Punchy Primes in there does allow you to do some long range abilities, and if your enemy is heavily armoured, it allows you to take out some of that armour from a distance, which is good because you want to be able to crack armour open to then be able to get your guys, your Scions, at the juicy meat inside. And the second thing to take into account is that it does give you a bit of a it gives you that anti-tank, it gives you the Alpha Strike capability, and also if you're taking well, that's kind of it. You know what, I'm going to leave it there. I'm not going to get into it too much on specific regiments. That's kind of it. The Punchy Prime, however, with the advent of now Valkyries, I don't think the Punchy Prime is as good. Now you do see people, you know, absolutely spam them. You know, if you go and look at Tabletop Tactics, for example, their whole Scion army is just missile launchers and autocannon Torx Primes. With that, they just take that again and again and again, and they don't. And they have some plasma Scions and a couple of Valkyries. Yeah, fine, it's okay, but it is the more expensive option. I know why they've done it, but when you put it this way, when you take a Torx Prime in that configuration, you're spending as much on it as you are on a Leman Russ, and you're trying to get it to do the same battlefield role, which is long range support. However, the Punchy Prime, it has nowhere near the fire output of a Leman Russ. Just, it cannot compete on the same level. A Leman Russ will always outshoot one of these things. So as a result, you're trying to get a unit to do something which it's not really that good at doing. If you take the Dagger Prime, it's cheaper and it's filling a gap that the Scions can't do naturally, which is horde control. What is the Dagger Prime? Dagger Prime is where you take the Torx Gatling cannon. This is a heavy 20 bolter, so it's got 24-inch range, strength 4, AP nothing, damage 1. 20 shots from one vehicle. Now you're cooking with gas. Okay, now we're cooking. Because if you look at the other weapons we've talked about, you know, the Valkyrie's got a decent amount of shots, but it's kind of designed for shredding medium infantry. The Scions have got loads of plasma, but that's only 4 to 5 plasma shots per squad. not a huge volume of dice. Torque's Dagger Prime fills that intermediate role of being able to just, not intermediate, that fills that gap of being able to just shred hordes. And let me tell you, my Genius of the Cult have been on the receiving end of too many Dagger Primes, and I hate them. I hate them. So I would still say that Dagger Primes are my preferred way of running them, but I wouldn't say that means you just take exclusively Dagger Primes. Depends how you build your army. If you're not taking a lot of Valkyries, that's when I would start considering the punchy primes. Okay, but what your Torque's primes do when you take them to the Dagger configuration is you move forward turn 1. Okay, you move forward and you get your guys into range. Now, yes, they are heavy, so they will be hitting on 4s on the first turn. But you get into range, you just lay down as much cover fire as possible, and then next turn. You don't really want to, once you've moved your Torque's primes the first turn, bear in mind they've got that 14-inch movement, you kind of want to move them in a position for the battlefield that they want to stay on Overwatch, because you want to sort of tuck them into cover, get them covering objectives, get them in range of the enemy army, and then they stay there, and they spend the rest of the game just churning out 20 shots from the Gatling cannon, 8 shots from the 2 hotshot volley guns. It's all strength 4. Hotshot volley guns have got a good punch as well at that AP -2. And you've got Stormbolter on there as well. I think, crazily, you can take a heavy stubber as well if you really want to. One doesn't come in the box, though. You'd have to go and get that elsewhere. But, you could take a heavy stubber and your Gatling cannon and your volley guns. You've got a unit that's putting out 31 shots. And it's just doing that every turn. And you've got 4, maybe even 5 of these things. That's just going to grind enemy units to death. Now, the counter argument to the Dagger Prime previously has always been, well, it's got a lack of AP. That is true. That is very true. But if you are taking a regiment like the Lambden Lions that get an AP -1 across the whole army, then it's a no-brainer. However, if you're taking an army like the Scion Jackals, which their ability is only good against enemy infantry and you need to be able to crack open enemy tanks, then you really probably want to actually prefer the punchy prime. So that's why I said at the beginning, you want to consider, it's not as clear cut anymore. Because, the Dagger Prime is good for some regiments that have already got all their anti-tank just covered under, like Plasma and with the X-Ray -1, like the Lambden Lions, and I think it's the Oten Gorgs, which can just deep strike within 5 inches of the enemy and just melt the crap out of them. And there's some regiments which don't need the punchy prime, however there are others which really do need it. Now, the punchy prime is also really good in your generic Militarum Tempestus Scion regiment trait because it gets to generate those extra shots within 6 inches. In fact, bear that in mind. The punchy prime is better in the hands of some regiments. So the Scion Jackals love it because it allows them to crack open tanks so their infantry can then morale damage to death. You've then got the 2 regiments which, if they target the closest enemy unit, or they're in half range, get the extra shots or the exploding 6s. Those ones, they really like the punchy prime as well. Because it means that you're able, whilst normally you're only getting 2 shots of missile launcher and 4 shots of autocannon, when you're then exploding those 6s, you get more shots. You're going to get at least 1 free shot per Torque's Prime. Look at that, that's like a 60% damage increase for just taking a certain regiment. That's good, and you're going to and the Dagger Prime can struggle to take advantage of those regiments, especially the ones that it's within half range, because it's only got a 12-inch range then to take advantage of the regiment trait. So it's a tricky. It really does. Even though it seems like on paper Dagger Prime all the way, I would build your primes based on what regiment you're planning to take. Okay. Now, I did talk about General Prime before. Now, the Torque's does have a third main weapon option, which is the Torque's Battle Cannon. I have previously dismissed this because it's a Strength 7 AP -1 D3 damage weapon. It's basically an autocannon battle cannon with D6 damage. However, the General Prime does actually have merit, because, but only in the hands of the Lambton Lions. You see, the Lambton Lions, they get AP -1, additional AP -1, all their weapons across the whole army. Now, when your basic trooper is already running an AP -2 gun, and when you're running plasma, which is already AP -3, the extra AP -1 there doesn't really help them, because by that point you're probably going to start hitting invulnerable saves. But having an extra AP -1 on your autocannons, having an extra AP -1 on your Torx battle cannon is actually really good. So if I was running Lambton Lions, I would take, and I was taking, like, let's say 6 Torx Primes. That's a normal amount to take in a Scion army, about 6 Torx Primes. I would take 4 Dagger Primes and then 2 General Primes with the battle cannon and the autocannons, because it's nowhere near as expensive as taking the missile launcher one, which is phenomenally expensive. And that unit is able to take advantage of the regiment trait, and all the weapons are AP -2. That allows it to crack open enemy light armor, something which the Scions struggle to do from range. Lambton Lions is not a trait you want to be taking to boost your already good weapons. It's a trait you want to be taking to boost your shitty weapons to suddenly make them actually really good. So that's it, guys. That is unit analysis from a general perspective for all the units available to what I would consider a pure Scion army. Can you take things like Ratlings and Ogrins? Yeah, probably. You know, they're auxiliary, but I wouldn't take those. I wouldn't consider them traditional Scion units. I wouldn't be thinking about them when you're building your army, because they take too much away from what your army is good at, which is shooting the crap out of the enemy. Now, we've looked at all these units. We've done an analysis, right? But how would I put it all together? This is something that a lot of players, if you're looking to build a Scion army or get into Scions, this is probably the bit that's most useful for you. Okay. Well, what you want to be doing, without a shadow of doubt, is taking 3 battalions. You know, Scion troops are cheap enough where you can get them, and Scion detachments are cheap enough where you can basically spam 3 battalions. And you want to do that because command points win games. It's as simple as that. And thanks to the new Psychic Awakening book, you have a lot of stratagems to play with, and you want to be leveraging them every single turn. So you want to be taking 3 battalions. Now, the way I would build my Scion army is I would take, in each detachment, as the HQ choices, a Tempestus Prime and a Lord Commissar. Okay, keep the Lord Commissar with Power Sword and Bolter, that's absolutely fine. Keep the Tempestus Prime with the Command Rod and a Chain Sword. Keep it like, that's just maybe a power weapon if you want to, but the Lord Commissar is the ones that are going to be doing most of the chopping. Remember, your Tempestus Prime is there to support. You then want to be taking at least 3 squads of Scions per detachment, and I would say out of those 9 squads that you're going to have, you want to have at least 6 double plasma pistol squads. Okay, there you take all comers, generic units. You then want to have 3 more toolbox units. You want to have 1 flamer squad in there. You want to have 1 hotshot volley gun squad in there, and 1 melter gun squad in there. You just want to take those because there will be that time when you just need to just do double D6 damage to an enemy unit with your melter guns. Get them in there. There's times when you want that volley gun squad to be able to just sit on your home objective and just pump out lots and lots of volley gun shots. And that time when the enemy's got some sort of -1 to hit infantry that's rampaging through your lines, you just want to be able to just hold the flamer down and just cook them. So you want to have each one of those little toolbox units. And that's a minimum, okay? You may be buying more of these things. After that, you want to be looking at taking, I'd say, at least 5 Torx Primes. Okay? At least 5. Now, depending on your regiment choice will obviously affect this, but if you're going, my advice would be to take at least 3 Dagger Primes, if not all of them as Dagger Primes. Okay, unless you're building around it specifically, I would default to the Dagger Primes, and on top of that, I then have 2 Valkyries and an Officer of the Fleet and an Astropath. Okay, any points you've got left over at that level, put back into getting more Scion infantry, as many as you can get your hands on, command squads, whatever. But that wants to be the core of your army. You want to have enough Torx Primes, and you're going to put one squad in each Torx Prime. You're then going to have that's 5 squads. You've got 4 squads left over. Guess what? 2 in each Valkyrie, Tempestus Prime in each Tempestus Prime in one of those Valkyries, and then you're going to have your other couple of one Tempestus Prime, maybe deep striking down with some other guys. So this is the last thing I want to say about. So that's the army. Okay, now that's the army. That's the units. Now, talk about this in the previous video. Just because you can deep strike doesn't necessarily mean you should. Okay, what you've got there in that army is the ability to, if your opponent really screens you out really well, and just deep striking is just not an option, you have enough transport capacity to load up every single one of your guys, and put them on the field at the beginning of the game. You might not want to. It might be, your opponent's forcing your hand a little bit. But if you notice that you've actually, you're facing like a melee horde, and the last thing you want to do is start deep striking close to your opponent and giving him chances to overwhelm your units piecemeal, you might want to deploy everyone at once, sit back and blast the enemy to pieces. Like, if you're facing an Orc Green Tide or a Tyrannid Swarm, that would be what you want to do. However, you also have enough points that you can deploy on the field all your transports and your Torx Primes, and all your infantry can go into deep strike. And you might want to do that if you're facing an enemy army which you know is just going to outshoot you, and you're not going to get across the field quick enough. Maybe the deployment's not in your favour. Maybe playing Hammer and Anvil. In which case, you've then got enough units on the board that you can deep strike all your infantry, and you might be facing something like, a Tau gun line, or another Imperial Guard army, or Space Marine gun line. Something where, they've only got one Auspex scan at the end of the day, guys. They've only got one Tau equivalent of an Auspex scan at the end of the day, guys. So at that point, you don't want to be slogging it across the field. You might want to be just using your transports to hold the mid-ground, whilst your Valkyries are rocket podding, your Dagger Priming, and then your infantry comes in nice and protected on turn 2, and just starts laying, into cover, starts laying into those gun line units, and you've not lost any of your main plasma firepower getting up the board. And that's key, guys. Protect the plasma. The successful protection and appropriate deployment at the right time of your plasma will win you every single game that you play. That's the key. Not every single game, but will give you a good chance of success for victory. So there you go, guys. That is the unit analysis and how you put it all together, and my list, and why I build it and why I recommend it in that way. Because it gives you that flexibility for deep strike, for not deep strike, to take on any of your opponents. And you've got plenty of plasma in there. You're looking at least 12. I mean, really, you want to be looking at like 20 plasma guns in your army. That's what you want to be thinking about. Anyway, guys, I'm going to go now. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Please leave lots of comments down in the comment section below. If I've missed anything, please let me know. If there's any of those auxiliary units that you think I really should be considering, put it down in the comment section below. Argue your point, and I'll get back to you. I'll let you know if I agree or not. Alright, hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it's been a bit of a long one, but thanks for watching, and of course, I'll see you guys next time.